The state of Missouri is kind of in a state of contradiction. Voters often pick conservative candidates at the polls, but approve more progressive policies. Those opposing forces are butting heads right now, especially when it comes to business. Last year, voters overwhelmingly approved Proposition A, a plan to raise the state's minimum wage, while also mandating most businesses provide paid sick leave for their workers starting May 1st. The legal challenges came fast and furious, and now the issue is being weighed by Missouri Supreme Court. Business groups want the measure repealed, claiming it shouldn't have been on the ballot in the first place. They also warn the cost of doing business could lead to layoffs, all while some small business owners believe the changes could actually help.
If you think we're being dramatic, we're not, because I guarantee you there are small business people all over this state that are having to make those decisions.
If you're in a state with this higher wage, maybe some of the neighboring states with lower wages, you'll have people moving in saying, well, I can get paid more in Missouri. Let's go there.
Republican lawmakers in Jeff City are also fighting November's vote, but are pushing through a compromise of sorts. They're moving to keep some of the wage hikes in place, but want to completely strike the sick leave provision from the books.
This really is not sustainable. And really, I believe if it were implemented, it would really hurt the people that we're trying to help.
That's House Speaker John Patterson of Lee Summit, who acknowledged he believes Missourians knew exactly what they voted for in November. Still, the legislative push continues to undo some of what they approved. Our roundtable's watching this and several other issues making political headlines in Missouri and Kansas. Please welcome back Brian Ellison, host contributor with KCUR, and KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney. Let's start with Prop A. How much can lawmakers actually pare back this measure?
Well, they can actually pare it back pretty thoroughly. The Prop A, of course, was a statute, was a not a constitutional provision, not an amendment to the state constitution, which means that voters can vote one thing in and then the legislature can vote it right back out. It appears that the bill that passed would completely repeal the sick leave provisions, would make some modifications to the minimum wage increase that voters approved. They would continue to increase the wage up to $15, but would remove the cost of living adjustment that under the voters approved proposal would increase every year thereafter according to the cost of living.
Businesses, again, really pressuring lawmakers to fight this thing.
Yeah, and the proponents of this are obviously saying, hey, the will of the people here is that they voted for this. But as Brian mentioned, this is not a constitutional amendment. It's a proposition, a proposal to state law. So it can be changed and revised, and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to keep the nuts and bolts largely on the pay increase. It's the sick leave provision that is drawing a lot of attention.
Yeah, and the main argument in the Supreme Court case is that the ballot measure addressed more than one thing and therefore somehow shouldn't count. That is not uncommon, especially last year even.
Right. Last year, of course, there was a ballot provision that was merely about ranked choice voting, but it said it was about keeping non-citizens from voting, and it had both provisions in there, and so that was part of the state ballot title. It is interesting to see what the Supreme Court will say about that. That could be a precedent-setting decision if they actually say that's enough to strike down an entire law. The restaurant industry says the sick leave is the part that they're concerned about, and that's why they're focused on that in their court case.
And interestingly enough, it was both the Secretary of State's office and the state auditor's office that was coming to the state Supreme Court and saying, look, no, this stands. There are lots of examples of different issues that are essentially one issue that get before the voters.
Mm-hmm. I want to move to Kansas for a moment. The legislature passed through 3 measures that greatly affect election laws. What's the takeaway here?
I think Kansas legislature is really going for it, Cody. They have a Republican supermajority, and they believe this is an opportunity to get something passed, even past the governor's veto potentially. The first of those laws would end the 3-day grace period for receiving advance ballots. So previously, if your ballot was postmarked by Tuesday, it could get there anytime before Friday. Now that wouldn't be the case. It would have to get there on Tuesday. There was another provision that would say federal funds can't be used for things like voter registration or voter assistance measures. There was another law that passed by a veto-proof majority that would ban ranked choice voting of any kind.
There was also it baked into one of these measures that they wanted the deadline to be on election night at 7 p.m. for some of these ballots, greatly affecting mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, which is something Republicans have railed against in years past.
Right, and would also potentially affect military ballots, especially for folks who are overseas that are sending them in, and then they might send them in well in advance, but they're not. They're at the will of the mercy of the post office.
You know, the election-related measure that might have the greatest long-term impact was the vote to put on the ballot in 2026 the potential election of Supreme Court justices in Kansas. That could really upend Kansas politics as we know it, potentially even undoing the state's current stand affirming abortion rights.
All right, a battle on many fronts. Brian Ellison, Michael Mahoney, thank you so much. Count on KMBC 9 News and Heart of the Matter as we watch the impact decisions made in both our states could have on you and your family. It's all on air and online at KMBC.com.